Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with the Wealth Formula Podcast coming to you from Montecito, California. And today is our Friday Fun Day show. This is the day when we kind of do different sorts of topics we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. I have exposed you to my latest podcast, which is Longevity Junkie. And hopefully you have gone over there, signed up, subscribed, the usual thing. If you like it, give a 5-star review. It's pretty exciting. Actually, this week's show, I think you'll find very, very interesting as well. It's actually Dan Buettner. If you've ever heard of Dan Buettner, he's the Blue Zones guy, right? He wrote that book, Blue Zones, and then he also did a Netflix series. Anyway, got to interview him. Good guy from Minnesota. So Nikki and I had a fun interview with him. So go check out Longevity Junkie, however it is that you get your podcast, whether that is via Apple, Spotify, I don't know, what else is there, Amazon, YouTube, and we're on YouTube as well. Anyway, let's talk about a topic today that has kind of come to mind for me because, right now, as it stands, I'm doing about 5 podcasts a week, one for Sapio, one for Longevity Junkie, and 3 Wealth Formula podcasts. And I obviously have other things I do as well. And specifically, I am in the business of investing. And so I'm constantly focused on, how the markets are doing, looking at our real estate and opportunities in real estate. And as it turns out, I actually am not a guy that I think is overworked. I don't describe myself that way, and I don't think my children would either. I spend all the time I have them half the time because, I'm divorced. They would agree that I have adequate time for them. And so the question is often posed for me, how do I do that? How do I have a number of podcasts? How do I have a number of businesses and still manage to, keep some semblance of a normal life, one that's not, working 24 hours a day? And the answer to that really is that I think that I am quite good at being productive. And what I'm talking about here is using my time efficiently. And so today we're going to talk about, I guess, what we could all, even including me, use more of, which is time. We've all got the same 24 hours in a day, but of course it seems like some people get a whole lot more done out of theirs than others. So what's the difference? Well, some of this is not magic. It's all about how you manage your time and how you focus your energy. I'm going to break down some really simple, but maybe what I would think would be powerful strategies to help you potentially take control of your time if that's something you struggle with, which a lot of people do. A lot of people have issues with this and have trouble with productivity and getting ultimately the results you want because you just don't have the time to do it. I'm not saying it's an easy thing, but I'm going to try to give you some tips, at least in terms of what I do and, some lessons from others. But, bottom line is time management isn't just about cramming more into your day. It's about making sure you're spending your time on the things that actually matter, because being busy isn't the same as being productive. That is 100% the case. Have you ever worked with somebody, for example, who seems to be so crazy busy, but they just don't seem to get that much done? Well, that's what I'm getting at. It's not the same thing. You can be busy. You can sometimes even create work for yourself. And that really isn't the same as being productive. So let's just dive in. So the first thing I would say when it comes to time management, and I think that this is really, really important, is focus on what matters. There is a cheesy saying, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And if you're constantly putting out fires all day and that's all you do, you're never going to make real progress on the things that actually move the needle forward. And let's face it, in today's world, you got distractions everywhere. So you can fill your day with dealing with distractions and giving them a disproportionate amount of your time and not getting to the things that you really need to go to. So how do you change that? Well, first, you start by getting crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve. You need to know you need to know what you want those outcomes to be. In other words, it's not a great position if you are waking up and the first thing you think to yourself in the morning is, what do I need to do today? You really should know the moment that you are awake what it is that you need to do and what it is that you need to accomplish. So again, you got to plan your days out. When you start thinking in terms of outcomes, you stop wasting time on the small stuff that doesn't matter. Your shift focuses to what actually gets you closer to your goals. It's because it's not really about doing more things. As I said, you can make work for yourself dramatically meaningless work, and it's not going to help you. It's about doing the right things. In fact, it might even be about doing what's called the one thing. Some of you might have read that book. I forget the name of the author. I actually, a long time ago, interviewed him on this show, and I highly recommend it. And the general idea is that, okay, you want an outcome, right? You have a goal, and these may be, the larger goal, or it may be some kind of intermediary landmark goal or whatever, okay? But you want an outcome. And in order to push forward that outcome, you need to work on one thing now. And so that's what you need to prioritize. So for example, and I was thinking, I do this periodically myself, is I write down the different things that are on the horizon for me, different projects, when it came to, for example, the podcast launching, or, getting some things going for our next real estate offer or whatever. What I do in those situations is I write down, what the most immediate impact I can make to push something forward is, right? And then I focus on that thing, sort of maniacally, because that's the thing that is going to push the ultimate goal forward more than anything else. So say you are trying to start a new brand and you decide, in order to have this brand, I need to have an audience. I need to have followers. I need to have influence on social media, whatever. You may start with the notion that you want a successful business, but realize working backwards that means a successful brand, and a successful brand may mean that you need, you need a strong social media following, and therefore your priority might come to that one thing, which is creating content. That is the idea behind the one thing, focusing in on the thing that you need to do right now to push everything forward. And I think it's a very powerful thing. And I highly recommend, maybe reading that book, or even just implementing what I'm saying, but it is a very useful idea. Let's build on that idea, though. Once you know your outcomes, you can start planning your day around them, right? That's essentially an outcome-based planning. That's what that is. And it really is a game changer. Instead of starting your day with a giant to-do list, start by asking, what's the most important result I need to achieve today? And get specific. What's the one thing that if you accomplished it would make a big impact today? That's your priority. Just as an aside, the giant to-do list thing, that probably is making some of you chuckle because you probably, like me, make big lists. I used to do this actually more than I do now. It was a habit I picked up as a surgical intern. I used to write down all the things I needed to do. The problem with making those lists sometimes is, though, that you put on things on there like, brush your teeth or something like that. And then those are things that you do Not that brushing your teeth isn't important, but you do the things that are less important first. If you're a list maker, what you really need to do is you need to allocate a certain amount of time first to the things that are hardest on that list, and then take the easy ones after that. But that is, that's something you see all the time. Big list makers doing all sorts of, 3-page long lists, but 2.5 of that page, 2.5 pages is completely worthless and useless. So once you got your priority, from there you can break it down into the key tasks that'll get you to the outcome. Remember, not all tasks are created equal. You got to focus on the ones that will give you the biggest return for your effort in any given day. So you may have heard of what's called the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. That's where 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your actions. What you really have to do is you have to figure out what that 20% is and make it your focus. Okay, so maybe you have your focus now. How do you make sure that you get the most out of your day from time, the actual way that you're going to stay focused and productive? Well, I think there's 2 strategies that I think that are worth mentioning. One is time blocking. Okay, time blocking is simple. You set aside specific blocks of time for certain tasks or types of work. So say from 9 to 11, you're going to work on this project. And from 11 to noon, you have meetings, so you can't work on it. But you schedule in another block of time to do, another project if you have multiple ones going. But you have to stick to that, right? You can't, if you have something scheduled from 11 to noon, you can't start with Instagram for 10 minutes. You can't, check email for 10 minutes, whatever. You have to be hardcore about starting and ending on time. The idea is that you're not multitasking, because multitasking is not efficient. You're giving your full attention to one thing at a time. Now, this was easy to do at school, right? Because what I'm talking about is just following a schedule. And when we were kids, when we went to school, the bell would ring and you go to math class, the bell would ring and you go to English class, everything was chunk. And the same might be said if you go to work, if you have an employer and you have set client meetings or whatever. But if you're your own boss like me, or if you have a lot of time to say, work on new things or whatever the case may be, that is a different challenge altogether, because no one is looking over your shoulder. In that case, time blocking is really critical, because no one is giving you deadlines. No one is giving you a schedule. You have to create structure for yourself. Now, the other thing to talk about is chunking, which is grouping similar tasks together. So, for example, instead of checking your mail every 15 minutes, you might dedicate 30 minutes in the afternoon to clear out your inbox, and then maybe again at the end of the day. So I generally do that at least sort of 3 times a day. It's much more efficient, much more efficient way to work, and it keeps your brain energy from bouncing between different activities, which ultimately, as it's going to drain energy and focus. Now, here's an interesting way to consider kind of putting this together. It's a method that basically, it's a results-driven planning method, which kind of ties everything together. You plan your day based on the results you want to create, not just a list of tasks you need to check off. So again, let me break it down. Step 1, focus on results, not tasks. What do I want to create by the end of the day? That way your day is driven by outcomes, not busy work. Step 2 is know your why. Why is that result important to you? What's the purpose behind it? When you have a strong reason behind your goal, you're going to be more motivated to get it done. Step 3, take action. Once you've identified the result, why it matters, write down the specific actions that are going to get you there. And this is the key, you got to make sure you're focused on high impact actions. You don't want to get bogged down in the small stuff, because small stuff is where people actually often kind of get stuck, because it's not even getting stuck. Sometimes you're very conscious about this. It's a lot easier to do the small things and call it a victory than to do the things that are harder but are more impactful. So go after the actions that'll move you closer to your outcome. Another thing to think about is, we all have different times during the day when our energy is really at its peak. So some of us are more productive in the morning, others really hit their stride in the afternoon or even late night. The trick is to figure out when you're at your best and schedule your most important or, the work that requires most brain power for those times. And if you're a morning person, don't waste the golden hours in low value tasks like answering emails. Use that time for deep, focused work that requires your full attention and energy. So when you align your work and your natural energy levels, what you're going to do is you're going to see a huge boost in productivity. Now, the next one, it's kind of obvious, distractions are everywhere. And if you're not careful, they just eat up your entire day. So you've got to be intentional about eliminating them, setting your environment up for success, whether you're working from home or an office. Create space that's really free from distractions. You know yourself. No TV background, no social media, notifications, turn off notifications. My phone almost is always on do not disturb. And how it works for me is that just makes it so that when I want to, I look down at my phone and I see, texts or I see missed phone calls, and then I can deal with them when I want to deal with them. But if they're on, they're going to distract me from what I'm doing in that moment, which I find very disruptive. And what that location in terms of like where you work and all that, it's also different. Some people say you got to be behind a desk and all that kind of stuff. The reality is I'm on my couch all day with my laptop in my lap working, and I am plenty productive from that situation. So I don't think there's really hard rules there. You just got to know yourself. Another thing we can talk about real quick is using the 2-minute rule. If a task is going to take less than 2 minutes, do it right away. Okay. If you've ever emailed me, you know that I always get back to you the same day. Unless you're emailing me in the middle of the night, you're going to get an email back the same day. I defy you to challenge that and not get a response from me, because although I may be chunking the times when I actually check email, I respond to every email that I get right then and there. Never put off later what you can and should do right now. And, listen, those responses are not always super long, right? I'm also notorious for very short emails, because what I'm doing is I'm reading and then I'm acknowledging. And typically what I do is dictate an answer right back and, either CC somebody or whatever to make sure that is taken care of. But it drives me crazy to leave things like that hanging. And that's why you always get emails back from me, guaranteed the same day. Why should you consider doing this? Well, listen, when you don't do those little things like that take less than 2 minutes to do, those little things, they just add up. And if you let them sit there, they start cluttering your brain and your schedule. And guess what? You get the same email back from somebody again. And frankly, they think you're ignoring them and that they're not important. And in business, that's really important. People understand that you are engaged, that you are there, and that when you get an email from them, that you are taking it seriously. I hate not getting my emails acknowledged. I am, if anybody's ever worked for me knows that. It drives me crazy, like not to get an acknowledgement of my email or my message, even if that's as simple, I've got it. But anyway, if you knock them out, those smaller tasks, they're out of the way and you can stay focused on the bigger stuff. It's a simple rule, but I really think can make a huge difference. Now, finally, let me leave you with this thought. The biggest difference I personally see between productive people and everyone else is the way they attack the day. Most people simply react to what comes up. They do the bare minimum, and ultimately, the productive person is very different. The productive person is active with their time. You know what I mean when I say that too. They are aggressive with time. That's why I like to use the word attack, because you are attacking the day. You're going to squeeze as much out of it as you can. And when you have that mindset, you're going to do really well in this world. And why? Well, I always tell people I work with that work for me, the thing about most businesses is that, they don't work with an urgent mindset. And because of that, we're going to accomplish in a day or two what it's going to take another business to accomplish in a week. And I stand by that. Every time I've ever had a business, that's the way it's worked. Anyway, that is it for me this week on Wealth Formula Podcast. I hope you enjoyed all of the podcasts that we did this week. Make sure you check out Longevity Junkie with Nikki and me as well. And again, if you have any emails to send me in response to this one, go ahead, buck@wealthformula.com, and I guarantee you'll get an email back right away.